Hey guys, welcome back to another deck profile here. So today I got for you guys another Blue Eyes White Dragon deck, this time featuring the Buster Blader engine. And so this engine generally consists of about 7 to 8 cards in the deck. So that's about the same size engine you would use for Invoke, or if you were to use the Primite version. This engine's a little bit pricier than the Invoke version of the deck. However, it's fun. I mean, if you like Buster Blader as a monster, then this is kind of like a deck for you to play. I happen to like both Buster Blader and Blue Eyes White Dragon. They're some of my favorite cards growing up, and so I decided to try to make this deck. Even though it may not be the best variant of Blue Eyes at all, it is fun to play. Now, I would say the main weakness to this particular deck is that you are playing a couple brick cards, a lot more brick cards than you would be playing of the other two variants, because you do have Busted Blader, which is considered a brick, because it doesn't really do anything in your hand. It doesn't really do anything in the deck per se, but you do need it the combo and um, for the fusion basically. So you do need to play Busted Blader. So that's the main weakness I would say of this deck. It's just that it's setting up the Buster Blader lock is a little inconsistent sometimes, but it is a very strong lock, and it does require you to play more bricks, which can make the deck a little bit weaker and harder to pilot than the other variants of the deck. But nonetheless, it is a fun version of the deck, and I wanted to share my build of the deck. Now, this build is still in experimentation phase, I would say. I'm still test playing it. I haven't really bought it out to a tournament to, put it through its paces quite yet. So I don't quite know for sure how it would fare against, the meta decks like Malice, Razio, or other Blue Eyes White Dragon decks. However, I do believe the Buster Blader lock is a very strong lock. It's very hard to out. If your deck is mostly monster effects, and you're not playing something like Book of Eclipse, or just general monster removal via spells and trap, the Buster Blader is very hard to remove from the board, and especially in Blue Eyes where you have cards like um, Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, you have Safer, you have a couple other cards that give your board basically indestructible from destruction. So it makes it even harder to remove. So you would, in order to beat the lock, you would need something like Evenly Match, the Book of Eclipse, or you need to tribute them via raw spear mode or lava golem. Some of those things in order to be able to beat the lock. But nonetheless, I think this lock is still a fun version of the deck to play. So let's go ahead and jump into it and talk about some of the cards. So for the actual Buster Blader monsters, I'm playing one of the original, and I'm playing one of the retrained version. Now, you're wondering why I'm playing two version, right? So there's two main reasons, right? So the first reason is, and the most important reason is that you don't want to draw a Buster Blader. If you're playing just one Buster Blader, either one or the other, then if you draw Buster Blader, your lock becomes significantly harder to pull off and a lot harder to actually do. While the lock can still be done, it's just more of a headache. So in my testing and just playing with my friends and hand shuffling and just drawing out and trying to play a board, I find that if I draw one of the Buster Blader, or if I'm only playing one copy of Buster Blader and I draw the lock just becomes extraordinarily difficult to pull off, and so I am risking more bricks in the deck per se by making sure that the lock is more or less more consistent to pull off. So I'm playing two Buster Bladers, and the reason why we're playing two different versions is for a couple of reasons. So let me go ahead and talk about that in case you were, in case other videos and other people don't want to talk about it. I like to go ahead and explain it. So we have this card called Buster Whelp, which is just the main searcher for Buster Engine, the Buster Engine, right? So Buster Whelp has a couple other effects. So on normal summon, you usually search for a Buster or a Destruction Sword card. So you can add usually Destruction Swordsman, or you can add one of the two traps. You can add Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman or Destruction Swordsman Memory, either one, or you can add the Buster Destruction Sword, the level 1 Dark version of monster. So there's a couple cards you can add. So in a state where you're just running out of cards in hand and you want a Buster Blader in the graveyard for whatever reason, you can't summon it, add this to the hand. And if you have a discard outlet, you can discard this card and then use one of his other effects, which is to tribute himself to summon a Buster Blader. You can summon this from the graveyard via the Buster Whelp. But you would first have to be able to put him into the grave because he is not a Buster Blader while in the hand. One of his effects is a continuous effect while he's on the graveyard. Um, Let me just read it to make sure. Yeah, while he's in the graveyard or the field, his name becomes Buster Blader. Buster Whelp's effect is listed to only be able to summon Buster Blader from the hand, and so he is not technically a Buster Blader while in the hand. So hence he can't be summoned using Whelp's effect. He can only be summoned while he's in the graveyard. Buster Blader, obviously, if you have him in the hand and you have a whelp that you've already used, you already searched whatever, and you just want to summon out a Buster Blader from the hand, you can contribute this and actually just be able to summon Buster Blader. However, you cannot search Buster Blader with the whelp, so they each have their trade-offs, so they each serve different purposes. And the chances that you summon Buster Blader to the board, it's very rare, but it does come up. If you need, if you're playing against a mirror match, sometimes Buster Blader is just a nice card because it just gains 500 attack points, and that allows you to beat over Blue Eyes White Dragon, beats over a couple other dragon monsters, but its effect's not too relevant. It's the fact that you can just summon it from the hand, which is nice. And then while you have a whelp in the graveyard, you can discard its Destruction Sword card, special summon the whelp, and that way you can actually go into Buster Dragon by synchroing them. So they do have a couple of purposes there. However, with Buster Whelp's effect, it is sort of a hard once per turn with its other two effects to summon itself and to summon a Buster Blader. Otherwise, you'd be able to just go summon Whelp, search for a Buster Blader, special summon Buster Blader via Whelp's effect, and then use Whelp's effect to summon itself by discarding a Destruction Sword, and then just synchroing it for a Buster Dragon. So they kind of, hard, well, not really hard, I guess it is hard lock you into using only one effect per turn, other than the normal summon monster effect. Yeah, that's why we're playing the two Buster Bladers, plus the original art with the Kotz's original art is one of my favorite arts there, and then the Destruction Swordman kind of just mirrors it. So I thought it's kind of cool to play one of each version. Next off, you just got the two Blue Eyes White Dragon, pretty standard. You really only need two in case your opponent does Bestial one of them. You have a secondary copy in your deck. You're never really adding this card to your hand. It is another brick here, so if you add this to your hand, you're basically it's going to be sitting there, rotting there, unless you get your Wishes of Eyes of Blue out there. So yeah. And then you have one Jet Dragon, just a another way to protect your board, another way to bounce something, non-destructive bounce, and another way to just kind of reoccur a annoying monster. So Jet Dragon is there for that. As for the rest of the Buster monsters here, you do have triple Buster Whelp and the Dragon Buster. So yeah, you can search Dragon Buster off of the Whelp if you needed to. Just make sure you have a way to discard the Whelp to the graveyard. It works best in the graveyard. In a pinch, you can still get the Buster Lock from the extra deck. So if you have Buster Blader in your hand and Buster Whelp, or the the Dragon Buster and Buster Blader. Sorry, it's kind of like a tongue twister. Like there's just so many Busters in the deck. So, for example, if you have this, you activate. You have, let's just say you drew a Buster Blader, right, and you have Buster Whelp. So you normal summon Buster Whelp. You can activate it. Search for a Destruction Sword here. The Buster Dragon Buster. Then you can also tribute this special summon Buster Blader from the hand, and then activate Dragon Buster and equip it to Buster Blader. So that's essentially a 2-card combo right there. This will lock your opponent out of the extra deck. However, it doesn't affect their board. So this is just kind of a simple lock here. Nothing too fancy. So your opponent will have to somehow out the Buster Blader in order to get into their extra deck. And that's pretty hard to do. I mean, Buster Blader is a 26 speeder, so not many decks can just summon out something that's bigger than 26 and run it over. Blue Eyes for example is one of the decks that could. You can just normal like summon Blue Eyes from your hand or deck or graveyard and just run over Buster Blader. So ideally, you don't want to be doing this just simple lock against a regular Blue Eyes White Dragon deck because then they can easily just run it over and then go and do their combo. So if you do this, just make sure you're able to protect the Buster Blader. Next off here, I'm just going to go through the rest of the deck pretty quickly. You got 3 Sages, 3 Maidens. Those are your other kind of generic Blue Eyes White Dragon level 1 tuners there. You do have triple Veiler. And then we have our other hand traps here. If we have triple Drow and Lockbird, triple Ash Blossom there, and we have triple Nibiru. So let me explain a couple of things here. So not really much to say about Veiler, Maiden, and Sage of White. They're pretty solid cards. Same thing with Ash Blossom, pretty strong, solid card this format. Nibiru also very strong, but it can be hit or miss sometimes. But I still think it's worth just adding it in there. This and Drow and Lockbird are generally sort of cards that will end most people's turns. So they're just kind of good to have, especially if you're going second. To have it in your hand, playing it will make your opponent cry a little bit. But okay, so let's talk about Drow and Lockbird. Now I'm playing Drow and Lockbird over Imperm. Only because I believe Drow and Lockbird may have a bigger impact than Imperm. Because Imperm, for the most part, you're usually Imperming something that's searching for a card. So they summon a monster that's searching another monster. For example, they summon Eyes Sage of Blue. Then you Imperm the Sage. They can still combo off, right? They can still send Sage to the graveyard for get the Link Spirit out, search for the field spell, and still go from there. Where if you let them summon it out and they grab, say, a Maiden, you may be able to stop them a little bit. You may be able to go activate Droll, and then they may not be able to search for the rest of the turn if they had, if they were planning on using True Light to try to get into their wishes, or you wait for them to go into True Light, set the wishes, activate the wishes, discard a card, then you draw them. So that at that point they're like down 2 cards. They may have a True Light, but at this point they're kind of like stuck on not being able to search anymore, and that will kind of shut down their turn. And this draw should work pretty well against every other deck too. It may work okay against Malice, may not be the best card against Malice, but it should work against Raziel, should work against most of the meta decks nowadays. They all do searching. Pretty bad against something like Labyrinth, for example. You don't want to be drawing against Labyrinth. You definitely want to side this out. But that's an example of some decks that Droll's good against. Droll itself is also funny in the sense that if you brick yourself, you don't have anything to play. Maybe you drew too many hand traps, you too many other brick cards. Droll itself is also a spellcaster that's level 4 and lower, so you can actually just normal summon Droll and go into Spirit if you needed to. If you just need a basic starter, that is an option that you can just normal summon Droll. In that vein, you can also normal summon Veiler, because Veiler is also a spellcaster level 1. So you have, if you think about it, you have so many ways to just kind of get started in some sense. If you want to just do your basic normal summon that goes into something, like here you go, right? You have, let me see how many cards that is. That's 6 here. You have another 6. So you have like almost 15 normal summons that can just go into spirits, the link monsters. So yeah, it's all kind of funny that because of all these hand traps that we're playing, they're also like level 1 spellcasters that would allow you to bridge into spirits and then bridge into the rest of your engine if you have some more playable cards there. Next off, you have Wishes of Eyes of Blue. In this particular variant of the deck, I definitely recommend playing 3. You don't want to play any less, namely because if you start drawing, there's certain cards that you want to discard. You want to discard Buster Blader, you want to discard Destruction Sword Memories. if you draw those cards and they sit in your hand, you're basically done with the game. You can't really do anything with them in your hand. So ideally, you want to be pitching them, and I say 3 wishes is really good. Some people don't like it, but I disagree. I think 3 wishes is a way to unbrick your hand. Even if you get punished by Ash or whatever, or by Droll, that's fine. I still think this card, you want to see it in your opening hand, or at least a way to get to it, right? Generally, yes, you would use Maiden to get into True Light, to get into Wishes, but that's not consistent enough. I still think, I shuffle my hands plenty of time, and I just sometimes don't draw anything to start off with. Or if I draw just with the 1 wish, that's enough to get me started somewhere. So I think 3 wishes is the way to go for sure. Next off, it's just the last couple of blue eye spells. Bingo machine. Bingo machine is like a 3.5 wishes. So if you still have 3 triple wishes in your deck, you can activate this to search your wish there. Or if you have a wish in the graveyard already, and you have True Light, you can use True Light to search for Bingo machine, and then try to get the other, gamble for a 60% chance to get one of the other wishes to your hand. So Bingo machine, that's its main purpose, is to get you into wishes, and that's really it. You don't really want to be using it to search for anything else. It's mainly just to get to wishes. And obviously you have the 1 field spell and the 1 roar of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. And then last off for spells here, we just have a basic anti-hand trap package a little bit. So triple tactics talents, you can rip a card out from their hand just to make sure you're clear to proceed playing. Or if you're bricking and they Ash or they Veiler one of your cards, then you can maybe just try to unbrick yourself by just drawing 2 cards. So very versatile card. Triple tactics turnout or thrust here. I only like the 1 copy because with this, we would generally search for you could search for triple text talent, which is an option there. But if your opponent has no monster on the board, you don't really want to be doing that, right? So what I use thrust to search for at that point is I search for a trap card. I usually search for the prologue. If I don't already have a way to get to prologue, then I'll go ahead and use this to search for prologue and set the prologue. That way you can synchro summon next turn and infusion summon next turn. So the one thrust here, some people play 2 copies of thrust, some people play 1 or none. I found that in testing this is just fine. It works okay. You'll see it when you need to, and you won't see it when you don't want to see it. So that's it. Call by Graves, not much to explain. There's going to be a bunch of hand traps this format. Most of them will hurt you. Morchami kind of hurts you a little bit. Veiler kind of hurts you if you're trying to start off with Sages. Ash Blossom will hurt you. Obviously, this card does nothing against Nibiru. But versus most other hand traps, this card is really good. So I would at least keep it in my main deck just because we are sort of a combo deck. Next off, we just got the 2 Blue Eyes Trap here with the Majesty and the True Light. And then finally, for the Buster Engine, we have the Prologue and Destruction Sword Memory. I dropped my memory somewhere, so I can't find it, so I gotta get another one. So, so basically just these 2. You used to have to play 2 memories because if you drew one of the memories, you wouldn't be able to really use it, and you would have to use the discard outlet. Nowadays, we're using very searchable wishes for the eyes, or blue wishes or whatever, wishes of blue. We use that as sort of our discard outlet, so not too necessarily bad if we drew this. All right, let's go ahead and move on to extra deck, right? So let's talk about that. For extra deck here, we got some, the basic Crimson Dragon and the targets for Crimson Dragon. So they're both all level 12 here. You want to get out this one first, and then get out Crimson Dragon, and then swap it out with that. And the way to do that is you need triple spirits here, or even just 2. Most people play 2. I found that 3 isn't too bad, and I found that sometimes I would need the 3rd copy if my first copy somehow got negated, if it got called by the grave, or it got Dominus Impulse or whatever, or Solemn Strike, or Solemn Judgment. For whatever reason, if one of them goes down, I would like to have another copy just to be able to use Crimson Dragon. Now, like I said, that scenario doesn't come up that often, but I found out there's really nothing else I would want to go into. You can play as if you play two copies, you can fill this out with like Azure Eyes or Moonlight, Black Rose Dragon or Michael, or even Crystal Winged Dragon. There's it's a kind of a flex spot for where this third Spirit Dragon is, so it's really kind of up to you. I'm just playing the three copies right now just to see how that works and for consistency purposes. And then we have finally the Hot Red Archfiend and the Buster Dragon. Let me explain about the Hot Red Dragon. So there's two ways to get it out, right? So the one way is if you have a Spirit Dragon or just level 9, right? And you have Crimson Dragon. Let's say your opponent somehow stops you from summoning out, you know, you have this, but stops you from being able to use this to go into the level 10, or you went into this first and you have just level 9 on the board. You can use him, target your Spirit Dragon, return him to the extra deck, and summon out Red Hot. So in those board states, Red Hot is still a really pretty decently powerful card. So that's one way to get him out. The second way to get him out is if you had your Buster Blader, and then you had, let me pull this out real quick. You had your Buster Blader, either the fusion or just the regular monster here. So usually if you have your Buster Lock, right, let's put this guy away for now here in the corner. So let's say you have this out, you have the Buster Dragon, and you have the Buster Blader plus the um, Destruction Sword monster equip, or you have the fusion, right? So let's say you have this on the board. So if you use um, Prologue, Buster Dragon does die at the end of your next turn. So, if you wanted to make use of his body, and you believe your opponent, you can kill your opponent next turn, and you're just more afraid of maybe during the lock they can't do anything, they can't summon out monsters. They set a couple back rolls, they try to protect themselves. What you can do then during your turn is you can special summon the Destruction Sword, and because Buster Dragon is gonna die anyways, you can then um, link or not link. You can synchro these away into a Red Hot Archfiend. So that's one way to kind of make Red Hot Archfiend the second way. So that situation doesn't come up that often, but it's an option for you to go ahead and do and go into. Speaking of which, we also have just the one Buster Blader, the Dragonic or the Dragon Destroyer, your main sort of combo there. Then for the rest of your fusions, you're topping it out with just one Tyrant Dragon and one Neo. Tyrant Dragon you could technically play two copies of if you wanted to. I just found that I never needed the second copy. The game usually ends before the second copy comes out. Some people do, or they're able to get out two Tyrant Dragon, which is kind of cool. And if you're on a slightly heavier trap build, you can just be setting two traps per turn at the end of the battle phase, which is kind of cool. They're not limited to once per turn, so you have two copies. You can be setting two trap cards a turn. And the trap cards are not limited to just normal traps. Like Labyrinth, you're limited to more normal traps, where with a Tyrant Dragon, just any trap card. It could be counter spell or counter traps. It could be your continuous traps. It could be anything that you want, so you can be able to set that. And to round off our links, we have two Spirit Dragons, one Hieratic Spear here, and then the one Protector. So Protector Whelp is basically to summon him to dump one of the either Destruction Memory, or you dump Dragon Buster into the graveyard. Dragon Buster, the level 1 Dark Whelp. So you use that to dump that in. If you drew one of them, you drew either the memories or you draw Buster Whelp, then hopefully you can discard that to the graveyard. Then you won't need to bring him out. But yeah, that's basically here to just kind of round out the link deck there. I do like two copies of this because sometimes the first copy gets negated with like Veiler or whatever. The second copy will sometimes come in handy to back that up so you can get to your Mausoleum, and that would be for the turn after, obviously. Or if you just need ways to proc, Lady plus Blue Eyes White Dragon in the graveyard, this will convert basically any of your level 1 spellcasters and dragons into this, and then you can just tribute this off to summon Blue Eyes from the from the grave, and then that will trigger Maiden to come out with him also. So that's why we're playing the two copies. You can play Lina, you can play um, other cards. I didn't include Naya in my graveyard because I don't think I would use it too much, but she is still a pretty good card. Uh, Lexa for the side deck here. I haven't tested out the side deck too much, but it's kind of just theory crafting, so just bear with me as I go through it. There's a couple cards you for sure want to have in the deck, and there's a couple cards that are just definitely just your whatever you want to use. First off, Lancia. I think Lancia is kind of a staple right now in the meta. To just basically stop Malice. Not really much to say, so definitely cards. This I would definitely keep in. Then I have two Ghost Ogre. Ogre is still a pretty strong card, but I don't think she's main deck worthy at the moment for me. But she does come into play against, you can use it against the mirror match, against True Light or Mausoleum, or maybe against like a Detonator or something like that. Um, I don't have too much practice against Raziel, so I'm not quite sure if Ghost Ogre is really that good against them. But as long as you get rid of the bodies on the board and force them to, go a long way around trying to get to um, their links and their fusions or their exceeds, I think Ogre has a place to be played right now. And then we have the two Bestials. Not much to say about them. They're kind of going going in as a pair, and they're pretty strong. And then for our spells and trap hate, we got Lightning Storm and Harpy Spider Duster. At one point, I was debating Evenly Match because Evenly Match is definitely better against the Mirror Match. If you can bait out one of their negates, then you can just go Battle Phase Evenly Match and then just force them to lose basically their entire board. So um, but I didn't also want to give up my battle phase because Blue Eyes has the potential to OTK since they put a bunch of big beaters onto the board. So I didn't quite want to give up my battle phase either. So I'm just gonna go with Lightning Storm and Harpy Spider Duster just to basically clear the back row, maybe clear some monsters if they leave it in attack mode for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't think you'll be seeing um, too heavy back row decks, so they may not be that great in the side at the moment. But um, that's to be seen. And then we have two droplets. Now, you can play other things. You can play Exceed Encore. You can play um, Ultimate Slayer, whatever. I decided to go with Droplet here for mainly one or two reasons. One reason is that we have a lot of cards in our hand that we want in the graveyard. So Droplet just gives me another way to sort of act as kind of like a pseudo um, card discard outlet. So, and it's not bad going second. You can discard this and be able to summon out a monster and beat over whatever monster that gets their effects negated. Um, and yeah, so that's why we're playing the two. I don't know if we're able to afford playing three in the deck because we don't really generate all that much advantage. There are times we'll generate some advantage, but most of the time I don't think, for consistency's sake, I don't think we're generating too much advantage to be able to warrant three copies. But like I said, this is a flexible spot. You can play whatever you like. I'm gonna test out Drop It for now. And then last off, we have triple Solemn Judgment. Same thing here. You can play Solemn Strike. You can play wherever else. Solemn Judgment is definitely a better going first card because then you can kind of protect yourself from being, Book of Eclipse if you're planning on doing the loop. Um, Anything else really, right? So it can also stop your opponent's initial summon. So if you're playing against the mirror match, you can flip Solemn Judgment over, negate the summon of the Sage or I think it's the Sage, right? The Sage of Eyes of Blue, or any other normal summon. You can kind of just um, use this to kind of hard block them from doing anything else. Or you can use Strike. Strike is also really good. Strike is good against basically everything, right? Strike is good because it can act as removal. So if your opponent has a monster that's already on the board, they decide to activate an effect, you can then strike it. Versus Solemn Judgment, it's more of like preventing stuff from hitting the board. It can't really deal with anything that's on the board, whereas Strike can actually deal with stuff on the board. So they have their purposes there. I think I fear the spells and traps more, so hence why we're playing the Judgment, and going first to play with the Judgment. And with Judgment, what I like about Judgment is that if you do reset it with Tyrant or you draw multiple copies, you're almost always able to use Judgment, because Judgment's only taking away half your life points, where like um, ju- uh, Strike requires 1,500, and if you can't pay that, then those cards become dead. Where Judgment is never dead. Judgment is only ever dead when you're going into time. Obviously, if you're in time, then well, if you're activating Judgment, you're just gonna lose. So, regardless, those are my opinions of the deck and how it's gonna should be run or should be sort of made. So, like I said, this deck is gonna require lot more testing on my end here, just kind of to get the ratios correct and see if it's truly necessary to play two Buster Bladers, or maybe I should cut it to one. Maybe I should play some other variations of different hand traps in the main deck. I know people are playing, the other Dominus card, like Dominus Purge. They're playing that. I don't like Dominus Purge, especially in this particular deck, because we do need some dark monster effects, like our Buster Dragon and, maybe Red Hot Archfiend or the Buster Whelp. Sorry, not Buster Whelp, the Dragon Buster. So I'm not really too keen in locking myself out of dark types or fire types or any of that. So I'm not really playing the Dominus Impulse there. Um, Other cards you can consider removing are these. Some people are also playing Designator, which I think Designator can be interesting. Designator is pretty decent against the mirror match since there are so many hand traps. Or you can just use it to banish one of your own monsters and negate their effects. So, Designator might be a good card. But for now, I'm just playing this basic package to just trying to get me somewhere. And, since I have a little extra space there. Extra deck wise, it's pretty flexible too. Extra deck, I don't think there's anything besides like the link monsters maybe that are kind of you need, um, those for sure. Same thing with the fusion monsters. The synchro monsters, they can kind of be changed around depending on your preference. If you want to play triple spirit maybe, or you want to play just two spirits, or if you don't have Slafer or Crimson Dragon, those are the spots where you can go ahead and kind of pick cards that you have that might work better and use those instead rather than going for the Crimson Dragon, even though Crimson Dragon is pretty powerful. Other than that, I think that's really it, right? So we got basically the deck down. Um, yeah, let me know what you guys think of the deck. If it's fun to play, if it's too bricky, too inconsistent, too expensive. I know it's not really a budget deck anymore. I think the engine itself is probably sitting around about 100, maybe a little under 100, just to pick it up and play. And I know some people don't want to commit to that, especially they don't know if this engine's that great or not. Based on my limited play testing, I say it's decent. It's just that like I said in the beginning, there are times where you draw double Buster Blader or double Blue Eyes White Dragon. That's just the nature of the game. If you draw those cards, it kind of you have to eye roll yourself a little bit, or you draw too many hand drops, not enough engine. If that's the case, you can add additional cards to help with that. You can add Prosperity to kind of help fix your hands, or you switch out your engine to something else. I mean, there's plenty of ways to kind of customize this Blue Eyes deck, and that's what I really like about this structure deck. It's not forcing you to just stick to one strategy and go from there. It's allowing you to mix strategies, which is kind of cool. Mix different engines. The Blue Eyes engine itself is pretty solid. And then you have a secondary engine to kind of back up the Blue Eyes engine in case that gets disrupted or you run out of resources or whatever, right? The secondary engine is there just to basically back it up. And I think the whelps are really good. And they're very searchable. The Buster Blader lock itself is pretty good. For those who don't know how the Buster Blader lock works, it's basically pretty simple. There's only three cards you really need, right? Let me just go over that real quick with you. So the combo is pretty simple. You use, assuming you have destruction memories in the graveyard and you have destruction swords set, you can synchro into him and then fusion summon into this guy and then use Buster Blader or Buster Dragon to equip Dragon Buster to the Fusion Buster Blader. and it'll do one of a few things. So this card will lock your opponent out of the extra deck. This card will change all your opponent's monsters to dragons. This card here will force your opponent's dragons to go defensive mode, and they can't activate their effects. So essentially, you have a one-sided skill drain and a one-sided vanity's emptiness is what you should kind of think about it. So your opponent can't summon from extra deck, and they can't use their monster effects. And so and also their monster goes into defense, so they can't even run over anything. They can't even run over to this guy, or run your Buster Dragon Whelp out, or sorry, your Buster Dragon over. You can also hard make Buster Dragon by just having a Buster Blader and a tuner. If you do that, then this permanently stays on the board. If you use the destruction swords or the prologue trap card, then at the end of his turn, he will die, and uh, mo- your opponent's monster will be free to use their effects because they'll unless they're dragon types by naturally then um, they won't be able to use their effects. So the only way to out this right here is to kind of like use um, Book of Eclipse, for example, Book of Moon, um, and maybe some other destructive removal. So yeah, like this lock right here doesn't inherently have a protection cause. Yes, one of the traps can protect destruction sword, but it will only protect this card because this is the only card that's a destruction sword card. So kind of pointless just to protect this by itself. Hence why we have the Jet Dragon and the Safer to kind of like act as another wall so that your opponent can't just lightning storm you. They can't just dark hole or regeki you. These cards will kind of prevent that from happening, so that's kind of nice. So the only real way to get over this lock is to basically like Lava Golem or use like a Raw Spear mode. At that point, if your opponent does that, then hopefully you have other lines of plays to kind of stop them from going. Typically with this board, you will also have a Spirit Dragon on the board, so you could go into Spirit Ultimate if you wanted to. So you can just get at least one form of protection down if that's all you need. So that's an option there. Anyways, guys, I think that's basically it. Kind of ranted on for a while. Let me know if you guys got any questions, or if you need help with combo, or want to know where to start. I can create a video on that. But I'm sure there's plenty of videos already out on YouTube that kind of shows you the combo or talks about the deck. So my version is not really anything super special and different from other person's, but I'm just playing certain cards because I believe they may be stronger than others, and I'm trying to test with the ratios also, like everyone else is trying to test with ratios. So that's the deck right now. Yeah, if you got any questions, comments, leave them below, and I'll try my best to answer them. Anyways, guys, that's it. I'll see you guys next time.